Ray had worked search and rescue 9 years, and he'll tell you the job is mostly finding things people dropped. That's what he expected on the switchback. What he found was something somebody had put there on purpose. Day 3 of a full call-out. A hiker missing on a remote stretch of the Colorado Trail, 34, out alone. Dogs, a helicopter, ground teams working a grid. Ray's team drew a section 2 miles up from the trailhead. Ordinary work. You walk slow, you look under things, you call his name and listen to nothing come back. He came around a switchback and there was a flat rock at the edge of the trail, waist height, the kind of thing you'd set a pack on. And on that rock were the man's boots, not tossed, not fallen, placed, side by side, both toes pointing uphill, lined up so evenly that Ray's first instinct wasn't fear. It was that somebody had set them down and gone to get water. Laces still tied, both in the same double knot, and the socks folded, tucked down inside the boots, the way you'd do it at home before bed. He called it in and stood there waiting, and that's when he started really looking at the ground. Above the rock, the trail turns to bare stone. You can't take a print off it. But below, going back the way he'd come, it's soft dirt for 200 yards, and Ray had just walked every foot of it. There were his own boot prints and the prints of the team behind him. There were no bare footprints. Not going up, not coming down, not stepping off into the brush. Ray checked the brush line himself, both sides on his hands and knees, before the rest arrived. A man does not step out of his boots on a rock and walk away without touching soft ground. He had 200 yards of dirt one way and bare stone the other, and he chose the stone. Barefoot, in October. They found him 11 miles northeast, 4 days later. He was barefoot, and his feet were intact. Ray wants people to understand what that means. No cuts, no torn skin, none of the damage you get walking even 100 yards of Colorado high country barefoot. And that country is scree and deadfall and granite. And no frostbite, not a trace. The lows that week were below freezing every night. A barefoot man out there 4 days does not come back with feet that look like they've been in slippers. It went in the report as exposure. That's the box you check when there isn't another box. There's nothing else to write. He stopped taking call-outs for that section. Not the whole forest. That section. When that grid comes up, he passes it on. And after the 3rd or 4th time, his team stopped asking why. He told me what turned his stomach wasn't the boots. It was the socks. A man in trouble, hypothermic and confused, rips his boots off and leaves them where they fall. He doesn't fold his socks and set them inside. Folding socks takes time. It takes calm. It takes hands that aren't shaking. Somebody stood on that switchback with all the time in the world and arranged a missing man's boots on a rock where the first search team through would be certain to see them. Boots side by side, laces tied, socks folded inside. Soft ground below with no barefoot tracks on it. And a man found 11 miles away with feet that shouldn't have looked the way they did. Before the next account, tell me what time it is where you are right now. Drop it in the comments. I want to see how many of you are out there in the dark tonight, and I read every single one. We're pushing toward 10,000 subscribers before the end of the month. If this account means something to you, hit subscribe. Everyone counts. And here's what I can't answer. Those boots weren't hidden. They were placed where a search team couldn't miss them. Was somebody trying to help, pointing the search in a direction, or making sure it found exactly what they wanted, exactly when they wanted it found? Drop your answer below. The clearing at mile 7 was empty when Dana's team swept it on day 1. On day 3, she walked into it and someone had laid everything out. A camper missing off the Art Loeb Trail. 27, out 4 nights on her own, experienced enough that her family didn't worry until she was 2 days past due. What made it strange from the start was what she left behind. Her tent still pitched and staked properly. Her food still hung 20 feet up, untouched, not tied clean. Her stove there. Her spare clothes there. But her sleeping bag was gone. Her pad was gone. And her small essential gear was gone. Headlamp, filter, compass, knife, which is a strange list. Those are the exact things you'd grab leaving fast in the dark. They're also the exact things nobody bothers to steal. They gritted hard for 2 days. Dana's team walked the Mile 7 clearing on the first morning, 4 of them abreast, calling. She's certain, and she'll tell you why. She remembers standing in it, thinking it'd be a nice place to camp someday. Third morning. First light, mist still in the low ground. She came into that same clearing and stopped so fast the man behind her walked into her. The sleeping bag was laid out flat in the middle of it. Not rumpled the way a bag looks when somebody slept in it and climbed out. Flat. Corners square, zipper pulled all the way down so the whole thing opened out like a blanket on a lawn. And on top of it, in a straight line, 4 things. A headlamp, a water filter, a compass, a folding knife, closed. Evenly spaced, 4 or 5 inches apart. Dana said you could have laid a ruler down that line and it would have touched all 4. Nobody had done that on day 1. That clearing was empty on day 1. 4 people walked through the middle of it. They found her that afternoon, 3 miles north, in a steep drainage. And when the timeline came back from the coroner, that's when it stopped being strange and started being something else. She had been dead at least a day and a half before Dana walked into that clearing. At least, that was the conservative end. Sit with what that means. For 36 hours after that young woman died 3 miles away, somebody had her sleeping bag. Somebody had her headlamp and her filter and her compass and her knife. Somebody was carrying her things around that forest while search teams walked past in the dark, calling her name. And at some point in that window, they walked into a clearing a search team had already cleared, unrolled her bag, squared the corners, opened the zipper all the way down, and set her 4 things across it in a line. Dana has thought about the order of those 4 items more than she'd like to admit. Light, water, direction, a blade. She's never decided if that's coincidence or the 4 things you'd list if you were telling someone what they'd need. It went down as a fall with an undetermined interval. Nobody was ever identified as having handled her gear. As far as Dana knows, the file is open in the sense that nobody closed it, and closed in the sense that nobody's working it. Dana still volunteers. Dozens of call-outs since, and she's good at it. But she will not sweep a sector alone anymore. Not ever, and she's turned down assignments over it. She said what changed her wasn't finding the gear. She's found bodies. She can handle finding things. It was standing in that clearing at first light doing the arithmetic. Whoever laid that out had watched a search team walk that ground on day 1. They knew the pattern. They waited. And then they picked that exact clearing out of the whole forest because it was the one place they could be certain somebody would come back to and see it. Gear laid out in a clearing that had already been searched, a day and a half after its owner died, arranged in a line you could measure with a ruler. Here's what I keep landing on. Light, water, direction, a blade. Either that's 4 objects in random order, or it's a list. And if it's a list, it wasn't left for her. She was already gone. It was left for whoever came next. Tell me which one you believe. The last account gets to me most, because the man telling it doesn't scare easy, and neither do the animals he works with. That's next. Cal has run search dogs 11 years, and he says you can trust a dog to do two things: follow a scent and tell you the truth about what's in front of it. That afternoon, both his dogs did the second and refused the first. A hunter had disappeared from an elk camp in the Bridger-Teton. 41, experienced, hunting that country most of his life. He was out with 3 others who went to sleep with him in camp and woke up without him. His rifle was still leaning against a tree at the edge of camp. That's the first thing anybody notices, because a man in that country does not walk away from his rifle. His pack was on the ground 10 feet from it, contents pulled out and scattered. And Cal will tell you honestly, that part reads normal. That's what a pack looks like after a fall or a struggle. Scattered gear doesn't mean anything on its own. 50 yards into the timber, a ground team found his GPS unit. It was standing upright on a cut stump, not lying on it. Standing, balanced on its end, screen facing back toward camp, battery still holding a charge. Cal wants people to sit with that, because he's found a lot of dropped electronics in 11 years. They land face down in the dirt. They wedge in root balls. What they do not do is stand themselves upright on a flat stump at eye level, angled back the way you came, like something set out for the next person through. They bagged it and called for the dogs. Both of Cal's took the scent and went. Hard. Pulling into the harness, no hesitation, no casting about. He said it was some of the cleanest tracking he'd ever seen out of that pair, and he'd had them both since they were pups. They ran it 200 yards through the timber, straight toward the far tree line. And at the tree line, both dogs stopped at the same moment, not slowing, not casting around trying to pick the scent back up. Cal was clear about that because that's what losing a scent looks like, and he's watched it 1,000 times. Losing a scent is confusion. This wasn't confusion. Both animals stopped dead in the same second, planted, and would not go forward. He worked them. That's the job. A dog stops, you don't panic, you work it. He called them off, brought them back 30 yards, restarted the line. They ran it again, same speed, right up to the same edge. Stopped. He tried sending them through from a different angle, 100 yards down the tree line. Same thing. They came to that edge and planted. Then both dogs lay down. Together. At the same time, without a command. Which Cal says he has never seen 2 working dogs do. Ears flat back against their skulls. Eyes fixed forward into the trees, not looking away, not looking at him. And they would not get up. He got a hand under the younger one's collar and she went rigid and dead weight on him. He carried her back to the vehicle. The light was going. They pulled for the night and went back at first light with fresh people. And Cal will tell you straight that pulling out was the right call for the light, and that the light wasn't why they pulled out. They never found the hunter. Not that season, not the next one. Not since. Cal has run those 2 dogs on dozens of searches before that day and dozens after. Neither has ever done it again. Not in a burn scar. Not near a bear kill, which is the one thing that genuinely spooks a working dog. Not in a place where a body was actually recovered, and he's had a few of those. One time. One tree line. He said what stays with him is that they didn't lose the scent. They found it, followed it, and then told him something. Every handler knows the difference, and everyone on that search knew it too. 3 of the volunteers there that day have quietly stopped taking call-outs in that sector. A GPS standing upright on a stump, facing back the way they came. 2 experienced dogs that tracked hard for 200 yards, then lay down at a tree line they wouldn't cross. Here's the real question. Dogs don't refuse a scent, they lose it, and these didn't lose it. So what does an animal know at a tree line that 11 years of training can't read? And is it worse if they were afraid of what was ahead, or if they weren't afraid at all, and they were telling him the trail simply ended there? Tell me which sits worse with you. 3 searches, 3 states, 3 volunteers who still do the work and still won't go back to one patch of ground. And here's the thread, because it isn't the gear. Scattered gear is normal. It gets dropped, blown around, dragged by animals, torn open by weather. Every volunteer expects that. What none of them expected was arrangement. Boots side by side with the socks folded inside, a sleeping bag squared out flat with 4 items laid across it in a line, a GPS standing on end on a stump, facing back the way you came. Those aren't accidents. Somebody decided how those things should look, and in all 3 they were placed where a search team was guaranteed to walk. I can't tell you who, neither could they. But there's a practical piece that matters more than the mystery. Lesson 1. If you find gear that looks arranged, do not touch it. Not the boots, not the pack, not the phone on the rock. You may be standing in a scene and moving one item can cost investigators the only thing they had. Photograph it from where you stand, mark the location, and back out the way you came. Lesson 2. Report it even if you're sure it's nothing. A pack at a trailhead is almost always someone being careless. Almost always. It cost you a phone call to be the reason a search starts a day earlier, and in this work, a day is everything. Lesson 3. Don't sweep alone. Every one of these 3 found something they weren't prepared for, and the 2 still working made the same change afterward. They stopped going into unknown ground by themselves. If something out there is arranging objects for people to find, being the person who finds them is not a position you want to be in with nobody at your back. Thank you for trusting Obscure Nights with these accounts. If you have an encounter of your own, our submission email is in the channel bio. We read every single one. This is Obscure Nights, where the cases nobody talks about get told the way they actually happened. Good night.